It's been a while since I've been able to talk about this. To be honest, even putting these memories into words is chilling, but maybe sharing will help me cope. I want you to know that this isn't a story. This is something that happened to me, something I endured. It all began innocently enough. I'm a movie enthusiast, and there's this quaint old cinema downtown that's my favorite spot to catch screenings of classic films. The theater had a certain charm to it, a blend of nostalgia and character that drew me in time and again. Little did I know this love for films would turn into a nightmare that lasted for months. It started with small things, a feeling of being watched, a brief sensation that someone was following me as I walked to the theater. I brushed it off as paranoia initially, thinking I was just being overly cautious, but soon things escalated. I would spot the same person sitting in the back rows of the theater every time I attended a screening. A tall figure, always wearing a dark hood and sunglasses, so I couldn't make out their face. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe they just liked the same movies as me. But then I began noticing them outside the cinema too, standing across the street or lurking in the shadows as I left. The unease settled in my gut like a heavy stone. I didn't know how to react, whom to share this with. Would anyone even believe me? The tipping point came when I received a letter, handwritten and sinister. It was left on my doorstep, slipped under the cover of darkness. The words were chilling, describing my daily routines in disturbing detail, revealing that this person had been watching me for a long time. Panic coursed through my veins as I read that letter, realizing that my life had been invaded in ways I couldn't comprehend. Terrified, I went to the police. They were sympathetic, but without concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested keeping a vigilant eye, noting down any suspicious activities, and installing security cameras. I followed their advice, hoping that maybe this would deter my tormentor. But it didn't stop. The figure continued to appear at the cinema, in the streets, and even in the reflection of windows when I walked by. Each time I turned to confront them, they would melt away, leaving me questioning my sanity. I felt trapped, like a mouse being toyed with by a sadistic cat. As the weeks turned into months, the psychological toll became unbearable. Sleepless nights, a constant feeling of dread, and a growing paranoia left me a shell of my former self. I distanced myself from friends and family, not wanting to involve them in the nightmare I was living. The climax of this haunting ordeal came one fateful night after another film screening. I was heading back home when I heard footsteps echoing behind me. Every hair on my body stood on end, and I quickened my pace. The footsteps matched my own, growing closer with each step. In a moment of sheer terror, I turned around, ready to confront my stalker. But the figure was different this time. The dark hood and sunglasses were gone, revealing a face I had never seen before. It was a face contorted with a mixture of anger and obsession. My heart pounded as I realized that this wasn't a random encounter. This was deliberate, calculated, and personal. Without saying a word, the figure lunged at me, and instinct kicked in. I ran, adrenaline pumping through my veins, as I sprinted towards the nearest intersection. I was fortunate that there were people around at that hour, and my pursuer seemed to vanish into thin air like a ghost. The police were involved once again, and this time, they took me seriously. With their resources and my description, they conducted a thorough investigation. Days turned into weeks, and finally, they managed to apprehend the person responsible. It was someone I had never met before, a complete stranger whose obsession with me had twisted their mind. In the aftermath, I had to undergo therapy to heal from the trauma. The fear and paranoia were deeply ingrained, and it took time to rebuild my sense of security. The scars, though not visible, were profound. I share this not for pity or morbid curiosity, but as a reminder that the line between fiction and reality can blur in the most disturbing ways. We often watch movies to escape, to experience fear and suspense in a controlled environment. But when those emotions infiltrate our real lives, the horror becomes all too real.